This is the ultimate camera showdown of Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition versus Pixel 7a, the battle of the best budget camera phones from Samsung and Google. Who will win? Let's find out. Let's start with color, profile, and saturation, and both of these phones create really good photos. Image quality is impeccable, but totally different from each other. There's so much difference on how Samsung and Google implements the colors of the images, but this will boil down to personal preference, and whatever phones you choose, I believe you would be happy with the image quality. Let's start with the images on the left. This will be the Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition. The colors are more vivid than Pixel 7a. You would see this on the red, oranges, and purples. Those colors are better exposed and livelier compared to the Google phone. You will also notice that most of the images coming from S23 Fan Edition is brighter than Pixel 7a. In most cases, people tend to favor these types of images because it is well exposed and more colorful. And if you're a fan of neutral tone, Samsung Galaxy S23 FE is less warmer than Pixel 7a, but I see that sometimes when you shoot the subject close to a source of light like sun or strong light source, it exhibits flaring that's sometimes ruining that perfect shot. While Google Pixel 7a is on the right and all throughout this comparison, you would feel like it is less saturated than S23 Fan Edition. One will argue it's a little bit dull compared to the Samsung competition. The colors are toned down. Sometimes it will be more saturated than S23 FE depending on the light source, but almost 99% of the time, the image is darker and more on the natural side. I noticed that it doesn't exhibit flaring and it controls the highlights better than S23 FE. In fact, I would say that the images coming from Pixel 7a has this high dynamic range look. In most cases, it also has a warmer white balance that looks similar to what iPhone produces, so in a way, you would feel that the images coming from Pixel 7a is more inviting than Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. Looking quickly on the specification, Samsung Galaxy S23 FE has 50 megapixel main shooter with face detection, autofocus, and OIS, followed by an 8 megapixel telephoto with 3 times optical zoom and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. The rear camera can shoot 8K 24 FPS video, while the selfie camera with a 10 megapixel sensor can shoot 4K 60 FPS. While Pixel 7a's dual camera setup with 64 megapixel main shooter, also with dual face detection, autofocus, and OIS, and a regular 13 megapixel ultra wide. The rear camera can shoot up to 4K 60 FPS. The selfie shooter has 13 megapixel sensor that can only shoot 4K 30 FPS. Again, looking at the colors, so much difference between the two phones, and you can definitely profile what type of phone you're using based from the colors. I would slightly go with the HDR look of Pixel 7a, but this would be a personal preference for everyone. And looking at all three sensors from the ultra wide, wide, and the telephoto, although it's only digital crop on Pixel 7a, colors and white balance are consistent. There are certainly differences between these two phones. Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition can shoot 8K 24 FPS, while Pixel 7a has speech enhancement for better audio and noise cancellation. Let's talk about portrait mode, and these two phones are really good in mimicking portrait shots from the more expensive cameras. Unlike the more expensive competition from iPhone and Samsung Ultras, there are some imperfection on the portrait mode on both phones, but both produce really good portrait shots. Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition has better subject separation. Overall, when you look on the cutout of the subject, S23 FE is better on the hair and around the shoulders. It is also brighter than Pixel 7a, and the filters on S23 FE provides beautification on the subject. I noticed that the colors are popping out more on S23 FE that makes the subject livelier compared to the competition. The only problem I have with this phone is the flaring. If you have a harsh light, it also affects the portrait mode, making it look washed out. While Google Pixel 7a is more natural looking than S23 FE, I guess there's more details on my face. You would see dark spots on my face like a typical contour, and because of this, it provides depth on the subject. The only problem I have with Pixel phone is the subject cutout. It's not as good as Samsung and iPhone, but the updates are making it better compared to when this phone was first launched. What I like about Pixel 7a is the HDR look, and even though the background has a harsh light, it still maintains the contrast of the image. The advantage of S23 FE is the focal length. It has 1x, 2x, and 3x, while you only have 1x and 2x on the Pixel 7a. And checking the selfie shots, you would see that Pixel 7a has wider field of view on both 1x and 2x compared to S23 FE. In terms of night shots, I would say this will be a personal preference. I'm leaning towards a little bit on Pixel 7a because of the natural look, but I know a lot of people will prefer the more punchier look of S23 FE. The new Samsung FE phone also has a warmer white balance compared to the neutral look of Pixel 7a, but I guess the biggest difference between the two is exposure. S23 FE will expose the scene better. While Google Pixel 7a will crush the blacks and has more contrast that provides that nighttime look. But S23 FE consistently controls the highlights better looking at the strong light source. Looking at flaring, both exhibits harsh flaring, so again, both phones scored almost the same in terms of night shots, but this will boil down to personal preference. Outside this camera comparison video, both phones are really good in terms of performance. Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition is running on Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, while Pixel 7a is running on Tensor Chip Gen 2. Let's talk about flaring and comparing all sensors on the rear camera, both daytime and nighttime. Pixel 7a has stronger flaring compared to S23 FE. In terms of highlights, although S23 FE controls it better on night shots, but on daylight shots, Pixel 7a actually provides more information on strong light source. Checking close focus, you would see that although they don't have macro capability, Samsung Galaxy S23 FE has closer focus compared to Google Pixel 7a. And looking at the white balance, S23 FE is cooler, while Pixel 7a is warmer. In terms of sharpness, I love both phones because they are tack sharp from the ultra-wide and the main sensor. If you look on the 3x optical zoom, only S23 has it, and if you crop in, you would still see that both phones are sharp, but S23 FE has more reach than Pixel 7a. And lastly, details. If you zoom in on the branch of the tree, on the right side of both images, you would see that although Pixel 7a is darker and maybe out of focus, you will see more details on the wood. So I think that's it for the image test. A difference in colors, natural looking on Pixel 7a, and more saturated on S23 Fan Edition. Now let's talk about the video test from the slow motion, stabilization, and low light. This is the super steady video versus the active mode on Pixel 7a. Both can shoot full HD, and I think the stabilization on Pixel 7a is better. But aside from the active mode, I think moving forward it will be a win on S23 Fan Edition. Starting with the ultra-wide lens 4K 30 FPS, you would see that Pixel 7a is a little bit shaky. Next test is the main sensor, and all videos are shot in 4K 30 FPS. Again, S23 FE has better stabilization than Pixel 7a. I just like the contrasty feel of Pixel phone. And this is the 3x optical zoom of Galaxy S23 Fan Edition. Sadly, there's no optical zoom on Pixel 7a, only digital crop, and the optical zoom of S23 FE is doing a marvelous job. And lastly, the selfie video, great stabilization on both phones. I think Pixel 7a manages the flaring better because I have the sun as the background on this video. This is the video zoom test, and Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition has better reach than Google Pixel 7a. This is a quick overview and test of the slow motion, and this is a win for Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. And this is the super slow motion test, again slower on S23 Fan Edition, but the colors on Pixel 7a is better. And lastly, this is the low light video test in 4K 30 FPS. There's definitely a lot of noise on Pixel phone, but S23 FE is a little bit jittery, but it has better exposure. Who do you think is the winner here? So this is the ultimate camera shootout of Pixel 7a versus Samsung Galaxy S23 Fan Edition. Two great phones from Samsung and Google. Honestly, I think you would be happy owning any of these two phones. Pixel 7a is better image quality overall. I think the warmer and natural looking photos looks more inviting on Pixel 7a. The video quality is really good, just a little bit shaky. But if you're on a budget, this phone is a no-brainer for you. But Samsung Galaxy S23 FE is a better stabilization on video, more likely the same camera performance as Pixel 7a, slightly more vivid colors, and brighter videos. But I think overall, from the performance and battery life, you will get more out of S23 FE. And there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll continue to compare these two phones in our channel, so stay tuned. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.